Hello and welcome everyone here. Very honoured to have our local member Roy Butler and our Premier Chris Minns in town. Both have done a really fantastic job in recent days to make sure that it has progressed really well. They've made sure that the whole nation knows what's going on in Broken Hill, and I thank both of them for that. We have an opportunity now as a community to make sure that our local member and our Premier are really aware of how important it is that we have a stable electricity supply, and a lot of that is to do with making sure that Transgrid provides the power that's needed so our local provider, Essential Energy, can provide power to each and every home. Thank you, and I'll pass over to our Premier, Chris.
Yeah, thanks Tom. It's great to be here with you and great to be here with Roy. I'm sorry the circumstances are really obviously very distressing for a lot of residents in Broken Hill and the surrounding communities, White Cliffs, Wilcannia, Menindee and other small towns as well. We're now in a situation where this shouldn't have happened. We need to be very clear about this. Under the contract for electricity supply by Transgrid and other electricity utilities in New South Wales, power supply must be guaranteed and redundancy or backup power must be part of that deal. Now, these companies make an enormous amount of money off the back of their customers in New South Wales. Their responsibility is to provide not just mains power but also backup power. And I know that there's been some dispute about whether the gas generators were ready or knocked out of action late last year or 6 months ago or 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. The bottom line here is that there should have been no interruption in supply after we had that weather event late last week, and we're now seeing many members of the community, many small businesses, the hospital, essential services that have been severely impacted. Now, it's going to take some time for Broken Hill to get back on their feet. I've come here today with the first round of a government support package, $200 for households in Broken Hill and surrounding communities, $400 for small businesses. I realise that's not going to make everybody whole, and there's been significant disruption and interruption in power, but it's the first step in us working with the local community to get businesses up on their feet and get the community going again. The second point I wanted to make is that clearly getting mains power back on and ensuring the mines can operate again is integral not just to the contractors, the employees and the workers in those towns, but also the general economy in Broken Hill. So I was at South Mine this morning along with the Mayor and Roy Butler. We spoke to management, the union, a lot of local workers about what the next stage is. Clearly the clock is ticking to get services back on and to get supply back on for those major employers in Broken Hill. I don't have answers for that today, but I can assure you I'll be interrogating energy officials as well as company executives this afternoon and tomorrow to ensure that we can get a guaranteed best estimate of when mains power is back on so that Perilia can start operating again and other mines in Broken Hill can start operating again. The last thing I wanted to say is clearly there's some lessons to be learned when it comes to government communication. So as soon as we possibly can, we'll get a shop front, probably at Service New South Wales, and ensure that government departments are centrally located along with electricity utilities so that individuals, if they've got a concern, can go to that shop, get the latest information and any help that they need, whether it's accessing this payment, support payments for local businesses, or just the best estimate about when power supply will be returned to the local community. There's a very resilient town, not just Broken Hill, but the communities in the far west of New South Wales. They've shown that yet again. I'm sorry that that's the case and that they've been forced to, but you can't keep Broken Hill down. Very tough, very resourceful people, and I'm sure as soon as we can get the power back on, this very tough, very resilient community will be back on its feet, and it's my obligation as the Premier of New South Wales to do that as soon as possible. Roy?
Thank you. Thanks, Premier. Thanks, Mayor. Look, guys, this has been a very tough time for everyone, and I suppose one of the things that I have seen is some amazing people in communities, clubs, the pubs, who all jumped together to try and help their community. It doesn't matter whether it's Wilcannia, Menindee, White Cliffs, Tibooburra, Milparinka, Packsaddle, Broken Hill itself. We've just seen amazing working communities to come together and help other people. and that's fantastic. We do see the best of people in tough situations, best of communities as well. And I really want to thank the Premier for essentially coming out here on a sitting day, which he'll probably get some stick for doing, because he's not in the Parliament as the Premier, and coming out and talking to people in the community, because it's important to hear what people have to say. To the Premier's point about a shop front, one of the things we know in a crisis or in a difficult situation is people need accurate information, they need that in a timely manner, they need to know how to access support. That's really important in reducing anxiety and frustration of people. And I know there's been a ton of anxiety and frustration across the Far West over the last week. So it's a really good measure to try and make sure we can reduce that. So we've had a day today here in Sturt Park in Broken Hill. We've invited the community. Obviously, people have come along and spoken to us. And let's face it, people have had a very difficult week. It's been a very difficult week. People have had to throw out a lot of food and lost money through doing that. So it's not the circumstances we'd like to come to Broken Hill and meet with people in, but I think it's really important that the Premier has actually come out here and been prepared to face the community of Broken Hill. There was no restriction on people coming. Anyone can come along and talk to us, and I think it's worth acknowledging that the Premier was willing to do that. Thank you.
We're all happy to take questions.
Premier, can you explain to residents why they were left without power when there is a solar farm and wind farm so close nearby? Where is that power going?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Obviously, the connection between renewable energy located close to Broken Hill needs to be connected. Those connections are often organised on a commercial basis with private companies, and I would love to be in a position where, excuse me, the New South Wales government owned those utilities, and I could direct, or the Minister could direct, the connection between those points. Unfortunately, the providers of that renewable energy and the owners of those transmission companies have to come to commercial terms. That hasn't happened yet. That's frustrating for the local community. We've got a job to do in providing coordination and some capital to be invested, but I would expect it to be far quicker. And I've got a concern that some of the privatised utilities in the state are running out the clock to get more favourable commercial terms when it comes to connecting renewable energy projects, which would have been fantastic for a community like Broken Hill. It shouldn't come down to that, though. It shouldn't just come down to a solar farm or a wind farm. Redundancy power might involve gas turbines, it might involve generators at scale being on site, not just having to be trucked in from Eastern Creek. That hasn't happened. That's a condition of the contract, and there needs to be answers as to how this happened.
Premier, I was just going to say a $4 million package, Transgrid are contributing 1.5, which is petty cash.
Yeah.
Did they volunteer that, or did you put the hard word on them that you wanted money?
Yeah, our officials spoke to Transgrid and suggested to them that that kind of payment would be essential for the community. We're prepared to come and ensure that state government money for this community was on the table. And the reason we did that is Roy was into us straight away and said, this is worse than you think. One of the main reasons why people in Sydney are not aware of the damage, the economic damage, the hardship in Broken Hill, is because the power's out and people can't communicate. And if they did, you would know that this was a serious issue. So I took that to heart and realised that we needed an economic package as well as far more government coordination and support for the community. But obviously, Transgrid's money is welcome in this circumstances, but a lot of people in this town would say you're going to have to do better than that.
Two major mining companies here. One of them we hear today is losing $1.5 million a day. Now, if you put that over 3 weeks, and these are only medium-sized mining companies,
yeah,
a lot of that could be make or break for them. You mentioned today you're going to take this back to Sydney. Is there a larger package, you think, in the offing for these companies? And then you've also got workers, a lot of them sitting at home not getting paid.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I don't have quick answers to that very big question. These are major enterprises for Broken Hill, and a big part of when they can come back online, they can get their contractors and their workforce back on site is when mains power is turned on, and we're getting conflicting advice. So I don't want to come to Broken Hill, give bad information out and have it contradicted in a couple of days' time. I'm going to have to take that away, see what the government can do, but we're determined to keep those operations going. They're hugely important for Broken Hill. They don't just drive the pay packets of those that directly work there, but they drive the local economy, and I know that. I know how important they are.
Just a question also is that we've waited days and days for generators to be trucked in here.
Yeah.
We've got an airport sitting there that needs an upgrade that the council's been trying to get money for many, many years. If that was upgraded, you'd be flying these generators in on day one, and here we are, day 4, 5, 6 and 7, still waiting.
Yeah, the mayor said to me this morning that there's a $8 million package on the table to repair the runway, which I think needs to happen anyway. And if it went to, is it 15? If it was $15 million, you could have greater capacity aircraft, heavier aircraft. That's something for us to consider. I'd also be looking at the federal government, who've got direct responsibility for aviation, to come to the party. And the reason we need to do that is because when you've got, the rules are different for communities like Broken Hill, because they're so isolated, so far away from major capital cities. Different rules apply, and capital from governments, whether it's state or federal, need to be put up so that you can keep these economies going.
The situation with IPART, their investigation, if Transgrid are found negligent, I believe the fines are fairly ordinary. I think it's only in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Really, what's that going to do?
Look, a couple of things. Firstly, the IPART investigation is important because, as you said, there's a $250,000 fine now. Maybe that's chicken feed for a major corporation like Transgrid. However, repeated breaches put the licence in jeopardy, and you can't just set up a utility and supply power to ratepayers in New South Wales. You need a licence from the government. The condition of that licence is that you provide mains power, and if the mains power isn't available, you provide backup electricity. So, the fines aren't anywhere near enough to trouble a big corporation when you consider how much money they make. But the threat of a licence review is a serious one, and that's the leverage the government needs.
So, today you're here, Roy Butler's here. Why isn't Transgrid here today? Were they invited, and how did they respond?
Yeah, look, I can't speak for Transgrid. Ever since it was privatised by the previous government, the ownership and the management of it is not in government hands. We could speak directly to them, and of course we've got ownership of, and in the right circumstances, ministerial directives for essential energy. But that's the only electricity company left in the state that's 100% government owned. And look, I don't want to get into the politics of it.
Were they involved?
Well, no, they've got responsibilities to speak to the community off their own bat, and as do I. I'm here speaking to the community, and I'd urge them to do the same thing.
If IPART find them negligent and they failed in their duty to provide backup power, we mentioned the fines, which are quite, pathetic, really. Is there a risk there that the government could take away their licence?
Yeah, look, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We've obviously got regulatory powers in place, but I just want to make the point that it's not just about the fines. You need a licence to provide mains power in New South Wales, and we expect those licences to be complied with.
And you're aware they're negotiating with a Canadian company, Hydrostore, to build a compressed air facility here, and that's going through the DA process at the moment. Will that solve some of these issues? Are you across that?
Yeah, I am. I mean, our energy officials say that will add some redundancy or backup power to Broken Hill, but, I've been down this road before with potential energy projects, renewable energy projects, and there is a long road between even capital being invested and the finished product being available for consumers. So all I can deal with is the circumstances as they are on the ground today, and it's not good enough.
How long will it take for the IPART investigation?
Weeks, but not months, I hope. Preliminary investigation in weeks is the best I was told.
And what about sourcing or having a relationship with South Australia so that we have a connection between New South Wales and South Australia, so it's just not one electricity line in? Do you think that's something that New South Wales should pursue?
Yeah, I can't speak to that off the top of my head. I mean, obviously we need to make sure that whatever capital is invested for a town like Broken Hill, it can be covered, and you don't want to have a situation where we could have, for example, a renewable energy project or a storage project or a battery project, or even working gas turbines in place to provide redundancy power or backup power. Ultimately, sometimes when utilities are left to run wild, they can gold plate their infrastructure, and guess who has to pay the bill? Regular consumers. So, look, this is a bit of a balancing act, but we need to make sure that the ongoing price paid for by consumers of power in Broken Hill isn't astronomical. So I'm not ruling it out, but I don't think most people would care where the power comes from. They expect the lights to be turned on when you flick that switch.
The $200 for the households, $400 for the small, medium business, Premier,
Yeah.
when will that be available?
Yeah, that's a good question. They have to build the system. I spoke to a lot of people today who said, I need that available straight away. I can't do it straight away, but I'm hopeful it's within the week. But we'll have an update as soon as possible. And I just also want to make the point that we had announced previously with Roy that the New South Wales Cabinet would come to Broken Hill on the 7th and 8th of November. I want to keep those dates. I want to bring all of my colleagues out to Broken Hill on those dates if the community will have us and the Mayor will have us. And the reason I want to do that is to hold everyone to account. I want these problems fixed by the time my colleagues and I return to the town, and I want the community to know that this isn't a fly-in, fly-out visit, that we'll be here again soon, and we can check progress and make sure that the community's up on its feet on those days.
So you're hoping in 2 weeks you may be bringing your own generators?
Well, I hope so. I'd be pretty hopeless at the generators and connecting it all, but you know, I'm hoping people better than me, more skilled than me, can get the town up and running again. Can I raise another issue which is important and quite distressing, but not germane at all to Broken Hill? The town of Corowa has had in recent weeks an appalling example of racism and basically neo-Nazis turning up. There's some suggestions that flyers have been put, or we know that flyers have been put in people's letterboxes in that town, harassing local communities. This is completely appalling. It's absolutely deplorable. It goes against the instinct of everything I know about regional New South Wales and regional Australia. It would be rejected by 99.99% of Australians in regional New South Wales. I think it's disgusting, and the people that are distributing that appalling literature should take a long, hard look at themselves. Thanks, everybody.
Can I just jump in quickly, just one thing? Look, I just want to say, in terms of the time frame to deliver money for households and businesses, it's really important to point out that the reason there's no system to do that is because the Premier has used his discretion to create a payment that otherwise wouldn't exist. So it's worth acknowledging, and I'd like to acknowledge the Premier has actually done this out of his own discretion, building a system to get money to people, which has come from the community members in the Far West. So it's just worth noting that this is not a regular pathway for recovery and relief. This is something the Premier has built for this situation. Thank you.
Is there potential for additional rounds of funding? You mentioned
Yeah, that of course there is, and we need to get a good sense of what the economic loss has been, but that's going to take a bit of time. I just want to make the point though that this money to businesses and households, we're not requiring receipts, we're not requiring any evidence of hardship. We recognise that the power's been off, that the town's been hit hard, and that we need to do something as soon as possible. Thanks, guys.
Does the government have any power to put pressure and transfer it to actually pay people for these losses? People have lost thousands of dollars worth of groceries.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an immediate answer, but I imagine that a lot of businesses will be exploring their legal opportunities or their legal choices in the weeks ahead. Thanks, everyone.
No, thank you.